If you're ever outdoors in need of emergency glue, I'm going to show you exactly how to make it from ingredients found in nature, just like survivalists did thousands of years ago. Stay till the end for a bonus tip you need to know when using this ancient natural glue. We all know that feeling too well. Something usually breaks when you need it most. That's not a hypothetical, that's just how it goes. The handle gives out mid-job, the seam splits on something you rely on, the one piece holding everything together decides today is the day it stops holding. And it usually happens in the worst places, when there's nothing around. No store, no backup, no fix waiting in a bag somewhere. For most of human history, that moment didn't mean stopping, because people knew something that most of us have completely forgotten. Not forgotten in the way you forget a phone number, forgotten the way entire generations just stopped passing it down because society got too comfortable and too reliant on a system that charges you money for everything you need. Now here's some history behind the survival glue. Researchers working prehistoric sites have pulled tools out of the ground with the stone blade and the wooden handle still bonded together. To give you an idea of how well this works, archaeologists discovered a 2,400-year-old wooden ship in Denmark called the Spring boat. The caulking holding those planks together was this exact same formula I'm about to share. It has held up for centuries. Try finding that kind of quality today in a bottle from the hardware store. The adhesive is still there, still doing its job on tools that predate agriculture, cities, writing, and the New Age system against self-reliance. Whatever those people knew about making glue, they knew it well. And the base ingredient is something you have almost certainly walked past without a second thought. You've probably seen it, maybe even touched it. You wouldn't have looked twice. This special ingredient comes from a tree. And I already know what just happened in your brain. You thought, oh, it's just sap. Simple. Got it. But don't go yet. That's exactly the mistake that would lead to a sticky mess without any real usefulness as a glue. Raw sap straight off the bark is sticky, brittle, and structurally useless the moment any real stress touches it. People who try it without knowing this exact recipe walk away thinking the whole idea is overblown. And they're stuck helpless because they skip the part that actually matters. Raw sap isn't the glue, it's just one of the raw materials needed. What made this super glue work across thousands of years of serious use is what people learned to do to it after collection. A specific process with specific additions, things that change what you're working with at a microscopic level. And that's the part nobody ever talks about. So here's what's actually happening inside the tree. When bark gets damaged, the tree pushes resin toward the wound. It's a defense response, sealing out infection, sealing in moisture, and protecting the living tissue underneath. The resin itself is a mixture of compounds, mainly resins and turpentines, that are fluid when warm and solid when they cool. When that material contacts a surface and hardens, it bonds through a combination of mechanical grip and chemical adhesion. It also sheds water, it doesn't rot, it resists degradation in a way that most natural materials simply don't. That's why it still shows up intact on tools that have been in the ground for an almost incomprehensible amount of time. But in its raw form, it has one serious weakness: brittleness. If you let it fully harden on its own, a sharp impact will shatter it with ease. Flex it under load and it cracks. For all its chemical strengths, raw resin alone cannot survive the mechanical reality of a tool in actual use, like a handle catching force, a joint under repetitive stress, or a seam that needs to flex slightly without giving way. The people who relied on this figured that out fast, probably the hard way, and I'm here today to make sure you're informed and prepared so that doesn't happen to you. Here's the part that makes this more than just a nature trick. They weren't just collecting and applying, they were actively modifying, improving, running a process that transformed the raw material into something with real structural integrity, and they refined that process across generations the way any technology gets refined. This means what we're working with today isn't a primitive workaround, it's a recipe that has already been relied upon over thousands of years of real-world use. I want you to think about the situations where knowing this actually matters. Let's just say you're out in the woods on a camping trip, you're splitting wood and your axe handle breaks, or you're kayaking and your paddle breaks, or you're hiking, then your boot gets a tear or the sole is coming off. Maybe your water waders get a hole and you need a patch. This exact recipe I'm sharing has hundreds, even thousands of applications that could potentially be a lifesaver. The problem with modern epoxies is that they're permanent or nothing. This glue can be reheated, adjusted, and even reset. That alone makes it more forgiving than most things sitting in a garage cabinet. This ancestral recipe for glue could literally save a piece of gear when it's failed and the nearest town is not even close. The best part is, even if you don't have to use this knowledge, just knowing it is what makes you more prepared than most others. Having the concrete knowledge that you could solve those kinds of problems without needing anyone's supply chain or anyone's store shelf, there's a certain feeling that comes from that kind of competence. It's feeling safe and secure without a price tag. It's the quiet confidence of knowing something real that actually works and can be done over and over again. As a guy who likes to do pretty much everything myself, you'll understand me when I say we have all paid good money for glue, often without a second thought, while this has just been sitting on trees the entire time waiting to be remembered. But one more important thing before I get into the recipe. Share this with a friend or loved one, because this is exactly the kind of forgotten knowledge worth passing along that can mean the difference between life or death in a survival scenario. My channel is built entirely around content just like this: practical skills, nature-based methods, and forgotten wisdom that got us here, with old knowledge that still holds up today. If that's what you're looking for, be sure to subscribe to my channel, because there's a lot more where this came from. Now for the part you've been waiting for. Let's start making the super glue. The base material is pine resin. You're looking for the hardened amber deposits that collect around old wounds on pine trees. The knobby, crystallized accumulations you've probably seen 100 times without thinking about them. Fresh seeping resin also works too. You're harvesting the tree's wound response, and in the right season, there's usually more of it than you'd expect once you actually start looking. Step 1 is heat. You need to melt the pine resin over a low, controlled flame until it liquefies completely. When it's ready, it becomes thick and honey-like. It smells sharp and clean in a way that most people actually find satisfying. You'll want it fully fluid but not scorching hot. Too much heat breaks down the chemistry you're depending on. Slow and thorough is what you're after, because maintaining a certain level of moisture is important for its durability. Now, the first add-in ingredient. You'll need powdered charcoal. This is the fine dry charcoal ground up from burned hardwood. You can use rocks to crush it and make a powder. This is the reinforcement. It fills the structure of the resin as it cools, dramatically improving tensile strength and cutting the brittleness problem down significantly. This is the difference between a glue that shatters on first impact and one that holds under real stress. The common starting ratio of charcoal to mix in is roughly 1 part powdered charcoal to 3 or 4 parts resin by volume. Mix it thoroughly until the color and consistency are uniform all the way through. Now, the second extra ingredient is a flexibility agent. This would be something like beeswax, candle wax, or even animal fat will do. A small amount, somewhere around 10 to 15% of the total mixture. This is what keeps the final product from cracking under normal working conditions. Pure resin and charcoal is strong, but it's still rigid. The wax or fat introduces just enough give to let the bond absorb slight movement without fracturing. The balance here matters. Too little and you haven't fully solved the brittleness. Too much and the glue stays soft and loses its flexible holding power. Just start small though, because you can always adjust and add in more later. Once everything is combined into a smooth, uniform mixture similar to cold maple syrup or molasses, you apply it hot. You'll want to work quickly because it sets and cools very fast. After applying the glue, press the two surfaces firmly together and hold them while it solidifies. A bonus tip is using twine to wrap around the glue, giving it extra reinforcement strength. For most repairs, you're looking at a few minutes to a functional bond. For full curing, it takes longer, about 30 minutes to a few hours, but the initial grab comes on fast and works almost instantly once cooled. What you end up with is a dark amber material that is incredibly strong. It adheres to almost anything porous, like wood, bone, stone, and natural materials the way it was always used to handle them. I'm not joking when I say this. The first time you actually test this glue, the strength of it will probably catch you off guard. What's also handy about this glue is that you could pour the warm mixture into a simple mold and let it harden into a stick or bar for future use. Kept dry, it lasts indefinitely. Whenever you need it, you just apply heat, melt off whatever you need, and you're working with super glue. Portable, reusable, ready whenever you are. But before you go and start making this glue, there's one other important tip when using pine pitch. When it comes to the recipe, that's it. You now have a complete working adhesive, 3 ingredients, all of them either found directly in nature or simple to prepare from it. No running to the store, no product that runs out at the worst possible moment, no dependency on anything that wasn't already here long before we were. We've built entire industries around solving problems that were already solved, quietly, elegantly, by people working with nothing but observation, patience, and whatever the world around them offered up for free. Pine pitch glue isn't going to replace everything in your workshop, but knowing how to make it puts you in a different category. The category of people who can look at a broken thing, look at what's around them, and figure it out with relying on the system that has disconnected us from nature. Now here's the final tip to using pine pitch. Pine pitch works best on porous and dry materials. It will have a hard time adhering to waxy or oily materials. It's always great to store a small block of it in your pack as a glue or waterproof fire starter compound with an indefinite shelf life. What's great about this type of knowledge is that it doesn't expire. It won't run out. It was here long before the hardware store, and it will be here long after. And now you have it to utilize. But this type of wisdom isn't found in everyday school textbooks or taught to our youth today, and it makes you wonder why.